Hi there. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. Today, I have a very special guest from Washington State. I think she said she's about an hour and a half north outside of Seattle. Her name is Jen George, and you'll hear her describe herself, but I'll just kind of describe what I think of her. I think of her as a spiritual healer. You'll hear her, I guess, aversion to the word healer later once we get into the discussion. So Jen George is a friend of a friend, and my sweet friend Amy, who you also will hear her interview at some point, had said, "Oh, you've really got to connect with my friend Jen." And I'm so glad I did. And I think this interview, is even more evidence for me that Jen and I are just riding the same vibes. And so she and I talk about spiritual healing, our own journeys, and how we think about the word healing, and we think about the word wounded. And she's just a really, really special person. And I hope you enjoy this interview. All right. Well, Jen George, welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I realize I've got to get a better setup. I record in my closet, as you could see when we started, and I am sitting on an IKEA chair that is not good for my back. And I did an interview already this morning, and I'm like, I'm going to have to set up a little lazy boy in my closet to do these recordings. Be a little more comfortable.
You need to be comfy, yeah.
Right? Yeah. But other than that, I'm good.
Good.
Yeah. So will you share with our listeners who you are and what you do?
Sure. I am a holistic wellness and life coach who has a deep passion for the energetic side of things and how we're energetic beings and how we take care of that and bring awareness to that on a regular basis. So my journey started back in 2005 learning shiatsu therapy, which is based in Chinese medicine. So it's a type of body work that's done fully clothed, working the meridians and the pressure points of the body. And so that work really just clicked for me about how everything is connected in our emotions and our physical body and our emotional and energetic, how it all is connected. And I remember learning that. I can even almost remember the moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I've never heard anybody say this. And yet you're speaking to my core. Like I know this to be true. So over the years, my work has shifted a bit and I work a little differently than I did back then, but it has the same approach. It looks at the whole body and where we might be stuck and how do we clear that up and how do we maintain that day to day? And that's why I brought in the coaching, because it's one thing to come in for a session and feel more clear. And then I just realized this pull to like, wow, I really want to help people change their lifestyle and their day-to-day routine so they can maintain that. So that is what I'm passionate about. And that's what I work with women on.
Just women?
I've always said that, but I still work with men. And so it's like 95% women. When with men, I meet men who like really connect with me and my energy. And they say, hey, I want to work with you. I'm like, heck yes. But I primarily work with women. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine energy work. Well, that's not true. I was just going to stereotype genders. So I'm just not going to say that because I don't think that's probably true.
Yeah. And even as I say, women and men, I'm like, doesn't resonate either. Right. So I work with everyone. I feel like women are more attracted to my work, but I work with everyone.
It's funny that you say attracted to, because I use that same language as a therapist. And I talk about the type of people who are attracted to working with me. And I mean, obviously in my work in particular, I have to qualify what I mean by that when I'm like, yes, people are attracted to me, to working with me. I'm not sleeping with my clients. So it's just funny that you use that. But I'm guessing that there are a lot of therapists that listen to this. And so I'm going to pull out two bad words that you said to a therapist is life coach. Please. Life coach.
Yeah.
And let's just put it out there. We're super judgmental about people who call themselves a coach. And it's because of my own bias that I want to call you something else. But that's me. Like it's just, we are so judgmental.
Well, to be honest, I don't love the term either. I feel like my clients call me that and they like understand that. So I'm like, okay, I'll call myself that. But yeah, I squirm a little bit. I don't feel like it's a hell yes for me when I say it.
Yeah.
I still struggle with that term.
Well, what would you call yourself if it were a hell yes?
So that's the thing. It's like, everything, like to like sum it up in a word or like 2 or 3 words is just so hard for me.
Yeah.
I played with the word mentor and like just sometimes I just say coach period and not life or wellness because I feel like those get confusing. But even that, yeah, it's hard. I think if I knew, I would be doing it. I'd be calling myself something different.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. My therapist is a shaman, and she has these women's groups that I go to sometimes, and my husband will be like, "Oh, are you going to your witches group?" I'm like, "Yep." So, I mean, I would call you in many ways a modern day witch and mean that with a positive, intent, but other people might be like more scared of that than life coach, but I'd rather go to a witch than a life coach.
And my good friends will, and my wife too, will be like, "You're just a witch." And I'm like, okay, that's
yeah, dig. So I want to share too how we came to be in this moment, because I just think it's so interesting. So we have a mutual friend, Amy, and I had told Amy about wanting to do this podcast, and she's like, "Oh my God, you totally have to listen to my friend Jed George. She was on this other podcast. And you have to listen to it." And like, I totally forgot about it at one point. And then I listened, and everything that you said, I was like, yes, we're soul sisters. And so then I was kind of creepy and reached out and was like, "Hey, can we be friends and be on a podcast together?" And you were like, "Yes." So here we are.
Yay. Yes. I love that.
Yeah. So Queerdos no longer is a thing, right? They're not doing that anymore, or are they?
I'm not quite sure, actually.
Okay. Because I would advertise for them if they are.
Yeah, I haven't seen any recent episodes, so I wonder if they're just on vacation or if it's coming back. So I'm not sure.
All right. Well, we'll look into that. Well, so on that show in particular, you told the story about going to Belize, and I think, you know what? No, let's back up. I'm going to let you tell the journey about how you came to where you are in this point in time right now. What led you here to be this life coach / witch?
I love it. Sure. Like, just going to repeat myself a little bit. So like I mentioned, I started off with shiatsu and Chinese medicine, or it's based in Chinese medical theory. And that spoke to me in this huge way. And I remember a moment, maybe 5-6 years into that, where I was reading about this workshop in Belize that it was like literally, it was like 3 lines, and my friend was going, and she's like, "Come with me." And it really didn't describe it thoroughly because it's hard to describe shamanic work.
Right.
And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm in." You're like young and you're just like, "I can do anything whenever I want." And I still am trying to be that, right?
Yeah.
In my 40s. And the money wasn't there, wasn't coming together. So I was like, "Oh, I guess it's not in the cards." But I was at a tarot card reader for something else, probably a relationship. I wanted some like clarity on some relationship I was in. And I ran out of questions. And the tarot card reader was like, "Well, make something up because you have time left." And I was like struggling and I couldn't think of anything. And finally, like, I just was like, "Fine, throw cards on this class, this workshop I'm not going to." She threw cards and was like, "You're absolutely going. Money is," because I was like, "I don't have the money." She's like, "Money means nothing. This is going to change your life. And I want the name of the woman because I have chills from head to toe. She's so powerful." And I was like, I just remember sitting back in my chair and being like, "Oh shit, I'm going." Like, I don't know where the money's coming from. So I left there kind of in shock. And like a week later, uncovered some cash in a 401k from a job from like years and years ago that was like just the amount that I needed. So I was like, cashed in that. And so I went and did that. And that was in 2008. Came back, was too overwhelmed. Oh, not overwhelmed. I did work with it a little bit with my friends, but I just didn't feel confident enough in myself to offer it to clients. So I set it aside. And then years later, I remember another phase where I was sitting there and I was like, I want to help people with their day-to-day routines. Like, I can see where if we worked on their diet and like energetic and emotional support, like these things that they keep coming back for massage for would be like less intense or potentially even go away.
Right.
And that's when I decided to go back for coaching. I did explore transpersonal psychology and I thought I was going to go back and get my master's, and it just didn't align for me. So, but the coaching did. And so I trusted and I said yes to that. And now where I'm at now is like, I've let go of the shiatsu and I combine the coaching and I do also do Reiki and the shamanic work, the Maya spiritual healing that I learned in Belize. So yeah. So at the core, I feel like I'm helping clients with the same thing. It just looks different and I have more tools in my toolbox. And yeah, that's how I got here.
Awesome. Will you talk more about the Maya spiritual healing? Because that's so cool.
Yeah, yeah, it is amazing work that just continues to like blow me away. It is so my teacher, Rosita Arvigo, who lives in Belize, studied with the last shaman in that area, Donna Lihio.
Hmm.
And she teaches two different things that she learned for him. So you might have heard of Maya abdominal massage, which is getting
Hmm.
more well known. It's an amazing type of massage that works around a lot around infertility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I've gone to practitioners for years for like my menstrual
Hmm.
cycle challenges and other things. But so that's one side of what my teacher teaches. But I learned the other side, which is the Maya spiritual healing, which is using plant medicine with
Hmm.
on a water ritual with intention and smudging with copal to create this beautiful ceremony where we can like let go of what's not serving us. Either, we talk about this backpack we have on, and some of the
Yeah.
books are like our parents, some of them are like ancestors from long ago, some of them are shock or fear that we picked up when we were younger or even last year. Sometimes I talk about if you're in a car accident and that shock of like, that feeling you have of like almost getting in a bad accident, like can linger when you're driving, it's like feels kind of lodged or stuck, like this fear. And so we can address that or anything like that when it's related to stuck emotions. But the most beautiful part is that we don't even need to name it
Yeah.
specifically. We don't have to know where does this come from, who brought this over, or where did this attach, or when did this start happening. It's just we just need the intention to let it go, and
Hmm.
we do this ceremony that ripples in really powerful and interesting ways.
I want.
Yeah. Yes,
I
I would
know.
love to share it with you.
Oh my gosh. When I was on your website and I saw that you only do that in person, I was like,
Yeah, I
no.
know.
Because you're near Seattle, right?
Yeah, I'm an hour and a half north in Bellingham,
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes from the Canadian border.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to Vancouver in
Really?
May. So if there's any way I can figure out a way to do that, I'm in.
For sure, I would love that.
Yeah, because,
Yeah, that would be great.
I feel like, and I'd love your take on this, but there's a spiritual shift happening right now, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And in my life personally, I think there's a lot of work that's happening on those deeper levels, like you talked about, like ancestral trauma or, other things that we're maybe not aware of. And I mean, science is backing us up with all this stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
epigenetics is,
Yep.
talking about transmutation of trauma from generation to generation. And I know that I'm carrying stuff with me that is not mine. And
Yeah.
it's exhausting. Like
Yeah.
it's like this lead. Somebody said yesterday, oh yeah, somebody was talking yesterday about wearing this lead coat all the time
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to just take that off.
Yeah.
And that's what the Maya spiritual healing does. I need
Yes.
it. I need it
Yes.
so bad.
Yeah. I also just feel kind of super inspired to share. Have you heard of family constellation work?
I have, and I've done one, and it was, can I tell? Well,
Yeah, I would. Oh,
yeah.
Emily.
Well, I can share just a little bit of it because, I don't want to out some things about my family members. So we did it. And for people who don't know what that is, a family constellation is, I mean, I don't know if they call it energy work, but it definitely is energy work from my perspective. And
Yeah.
there was a therapist who was facilitating this, and I don't even remember what I said because you pick a thing, whatever
Mm-hmm.
relationship or, that you want to work on. And so I picked my relationship with my brother, and then she picked other people to play different people, and so
Mm-hmm.
one person played my brother, another person played my mom, and then it's like improv, but it's really led energetically and from this intuitive place of knowing rather than I don't say, hey, you playing my brother, you do this. And so the experience that I had was so profound, and I was able to, even though I knew everything that came out of that intellectually, I was able to step back from a different perspective and recognize some patterns in my ancestry that I hadn't thought about in that way, and how it made so much sense that my relationship with my brother was so laden with fear just based on what had happened in the lineage. And I mean, I was able to let go of some pieces of that and recognize I can step back and this is beyond my control because it's been happening for generation after generation.
Yeah, I can totally. I've had a really similar experience with the work. And what I find so refreshing about that, and I think it's shamanic work. I mean, I'm like, this has a shamanic, component for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because one, I feel lighter. I don't feel as responsible or as like entangled with whatever issue or person I do a constellation on or about. But also, they say that the healings that happen in that sort of setting ripple forward.
Yeah.
And they ripple back.
Right.
Like, it is this expansive it's so hard to put words to experience that has a really profound effect. So yeah, when you were talking about, the Maya work does definitely overlap with family constellation work. And I just was like, I just finished a year called Learning Circle in family constellation work. So I'm not offering it with clients yet, but it's definitely like fine. Then one of the things, calling to me lately.
I need to do a training in that because it really is. It's so magical.
So good.
And group work is my favorite of all the work.
Oh, is it? Cool.
Oh, yeah. As a group facilitator, I feel like I'm a conductor instead of having to one-on-one. There's just so much more pressure as a therapist.
Yeah, totally. I feel like just since I moved to Bellingham, I started doing more group work and leading a monthly circle called the Energy Awareness Circle. And it's donation based. So I don't know if there's going to be 4 people. And then sometimes there's 25 people. And I'm like, okay, here you go, Jen. Like, trust that you've got the tools and it works. Like, I really love the energy of a group and how people learn from each other. And like, I love watching those connections happen. And then, it's really cool stuff.
And that made me think of something that I wanted to fight with you about, and not really fight. I'm being dramatic about it. But you had said something in the other podcast that I want to tease out a little bit, because you had said that when people come to you, you believe that you don't have the answer, that they have the answer. And the thing that I guess I've been, as a therapist, I feel like people probably, if they're coming to you for energy work kind of stuff, maybe they're open in a different way than sometimes they are when they come to me as a therapist. But I see a lot of people in denial, and it's not necessarily denial of addiction, but denial of their truth. And based on growing up in my family where, I watched people deny their truth every second of every day, I got really good at being able to intuit, like, you have more than this, like you have more capacity. Or, my mom would always be like, everything's fine. And I'm like, it's not fine. So I feel like I have this ability to tap into what could be people's highest good if they're ready to open themselves to that. And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. And I think everybody has the truth inside them, but not everybody has developed access to that truth. Yes.
Oh, I 100% agree with that statement. And so when I say you have the answer, or you have the answer within you, it's not, I don't have it for you. That's what I mean. Like, it's in there. It might be like clouded, there's a huge fog around it, or there's something blocking it, or there's something that's like you're not connecting to for whatever reason, whether it's emotional, energetic, spiritual, I don't know. But I see my job as helping clear the fog so they can connect to that.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by that.
I like that idea of clearing the fog. Yeah. I think about that too. I see my job as trying to help make that connection. And I guess too, for people who come to me, there's a part of them that wants to see it and there's a part of them that doesn't. And so I try to strengthen the part of them that does in order to get to that truth. Because, I mean, there's nothing more heartbreaking than watching somebody that you care about get in their own way. And we all do it in different, varying degrees of suffering, right?
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
Can relate to that.
Right. Well, let's shift to, I want to know what you think about using the word healer in the capacity of what you do.
Yeah, I struggle with it. Not even struggle with it. I feel like I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, that doesn't resonate with me, that word. Again, I feel like I struggle with words in general, with like these like labels for myself, because I feel so much more, I don't know, dynamic, or it's just really hard for me with the word. So I remember in the beginning, it was like, nope, I won't go near that word. And it was very much like, I don't feel not worthy. That's not the word. I didn't feel comfortable. It made me squirm. It made me feel like, oh gosh, I couldn't call myself that. And then I remember several years ago coming to a point where I'm like, well, I feel like, okay, I can try that on. Let's see how that fits. Like, I don't want to resist it just because I don't feel like, because of a worthiness thing, or like,
right.
just because I'm scared of it. I don't want to, I don't want to like feel into it because I'm scared of it. So I decided to lean in, and I remember like maybe even putting it on, like changing my newsletter, maybe something had like, describing myself. And then I just finally came to the point where I'm like, oh no, it's not that I'm scared of it. It just doesn't resonate, because healer to me, how I interpret it, is that I'm the one doing the healing. And I don't believe that. I believe I'm holding the space. I've got some tools, but there's way more going on. This isn't me healing you. This isn't me fixing you. This is, I'm just kind of the person holding the space in the channel, I guess, in a way. So that's why I've finally decided like, oh, that doesn't fit for me. But I don't feel like I also have judgment. I some of my teachers use that term, and I don't, it doesn't turn me off. It just, for me, it doesn't work.
And that's so interesting that you say, that you're like, nope, that doesn't work for me. But you answer the same way as almost everybody else answers that question, in that they are a conduit, vessel, channel. Those words, one of those three words always comes up. And it's funny because I am trying to step into owning the word healer, but I also think the same, right? I think that I am a conduit and a vessel, and that it is the relationship. Being a healer is not, me bestowing things on you, but in this relationship, I just happen to be connected to something that would be helpful for you.
Yeah.
And I was talking with another person that I interviewed about it, and we were talking about the socialization of women and wondering if, our fear of sometimes stepping into that word is that we're socialized not to take too much responsibility for being powerful.
Yeah. Whew, yeah. That's what I was scared, was my fear of like, it's too big of a word. I can't be that, I was playing small. And so that was my fear. So that's, and it's so fascinating, like words and how we all interpret them differently. Like, it sounds like we're on the same page as far as how we work with people. And it's just like, and healer, sounds like it works for you. And there's just nothing wrong. I mean, yes, that all is true. I just love that.
Well, that's a good demonstration of the concept of yes and everything being gray, because there's not, either you're a healer or you're not, right? Like, there is this gradation of interpretation of words and what they mean and how they feel too. I think different words have different energy. And to me, again, like healer is this kind of connective experience where I think, and actually, I don't remember if you mentioned anything about this in the other podcast, but do you have a religious background in your upbringing?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through college, by the way.
Oh, girl. Oh, so serious Catholicism recovery going on, I bet.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And some of the people that I've talked to who have less of a connection to that word tend to have more, I don't want to say trauma in their religious or spiritual history, but there's something there in that origin that makes the word healer less appealing.
That's interesting. I've never felt into that, but that's like something I'd like to like just sit with and explore.
I need to do a research study after this, because when you ask people the same questions over and over and you get similar answers, there's got to be something in the, I just had a feeling about something cool. I don't know. We'll find out.
I love it.
Yeah. So if you don't embrace the word healer, then how do you feel about wounded healer?
Funny enough, it doesn't trigger me like healer does.
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm like realizing, I'm like shining a light on some internal oh, that's so, I'm fascinated by that myself.
Right.
So I guess I'm not focused on the word healer. I'm focused on the word like wounded, maybe helper or whatever. I don't know. I guess.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me, because when I think about what that means, whether it's the word healer or not, the reason I do this work is because I can connect with my clients so well on where they're at and what they're going through.
Yeah.
There's just like so many times in every session I do with clients where I'm like, yep, I know that feeling, or yep, I can totally relate to that, or yep, I've been there. And sometimes it was like 20 years ago and sometimes it was like last month.
Yeah.
Like I can see you and I can hear you. And because I've been through this journey and I wasn't always so aware of the energetic world. I wasn't always aware of my emotional state. The reason I'm doing this work is
Yeah.
because I wasn't, and I had to find it. And when I found what worked for me, it changed my life. And I was like, I have to like share this with other people. So it totally resonates with me, that concept, that archetype. Like, I feel like I know what that is. I can so relate to that. But the word healer itself doesn't.
Right.
Feels irrelevant. It almost feels irrelevant. Like that word,
Yeah.
like, yeah, whatever. But the concept, yes.
That's awesome. Well, and do you know anything about astrology? Because there's something going on with Chiron right now.
I'm just starting to read and explore that area, but I don't know exactly what's happening right now.
I can't, and I don't know why. There's some sort of like brain block for me in like remembering anything that has to do with astrology, but I read something the other day where we're in a space where Chiron is very active, and where I guess wherever Chiron is in your astrological chart is where you are called to do the deepest healing in your own life. I forgot I was going to look up my chart again and see where he's hanging out.
Yeah, me too. I know that there's just old stuff being pulled. I mean, personally, and I see it, these patterns with my clients and with my friends and everything.
Yeah.
It's just like we're being forced. I feel like I'm being forced to really look at some stuff that's been in the shadow side for a long time. And I'm like, oh man, this is so uncomfortable, but I know it's needed. Fine. I'll do it.
Well, and I think that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with people that are in denial. I feel like I see a split right now, and I see a faction of people who are eyes open, awake, and suffering as a result of like doing all this deep healing. And then I see this other faction of people, eyes closed, gritting their teeth, trying to push their way through life without addressing these things. And it makes me sad.
Yeah. And this is something you had said earlier that I wanted to just mention real quick. And you're like, well, maybe different people are coming to see me as a therapist than they are to see you as a coach. And I would say, from my experience, yes, because I have some people come to see me and it's so obvious, like, oh, nope, you're needing a therapist. Yeah, this might feel like, safer for some reason, but we're not going to go deep into your past and bring that stuff up because that's, out of my scope. But I do see a range of people where I'm like, oh, nope, that's therapy. And then, oh, nope, I can help you with the coach part and looking forward and moving forward with action steps.
Yeah.
So I would say, yes, I see definitely a percentage of people like with the eyes closed, clenching, not wanting to move forward. I think what I've noticed, I can speak for only myself. What I've noticed with the people that I'm working with is that something has shifted for them even a little bit. Either maybe they were like that, but an opening has occurred for them to show up and be vulnerable. And I don't know if as a therapist, I'm assuming, or maybe you do offer like a session, not a free session, but an initial session. You're like, is this a good fit? Because sometimes people come in and it's immediate, like, oh, nope, how I work, we're not resonating for whatever reason, whether they're not open or ready for, or whatever. I don't even want to phrase that or put words to that. So I'm working with people who are open in this new way to stepping into their life in a more inspired and connected way. So I could see where as a therapist, you're getting more of a range than me. I guess that's what it all comes down to.
Well, I guess, and I should clarify that it's not, because to be really honest, I have a really low caseload right now because I'm doing a lot of administration and management, but I feel like in the general world is where I'm seeing this, not just with clients, but with people in my life, on the periphery of my life. That's where I feel like I see the split. And I think a lot of it has to do with the political climate is so divisive right now. And I think people are really wanting to hang on to that black and white way of seeing things. And we can't. It's not working. And I feel like the people who are struggling to, connect with maybe their higher purpose for themselves, they want it to be black and white. They want there to be a yes or no answer. And that's what's keeping their eyes closed and their jaw clenched.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you spoke to that more. I can, totally agree with that as well.
You said something earlier that I want to tap into as well. You talked about really seeing the people that you sit with. And I want to say that that is one of the facets that makes somebody a healer. And I'm just going to call you that. You don't have to call yourself that. I'm just going to, for the purposes of this interview.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
And I think for me, like I said earlier, I developed this intuitive, and actually it's probably really actually psychic if we're going to be more specific about the definitions, but developed the ability to feel what other people were feeling, see what other people were or weren't seeing as their truth aside from my own. And I think that that's a gift of being a healer. And I'm curious for you, do you know where you cultivated that? Was it something that you always had, or did you really try to cultivate it?
Interesting. I would say yes and.
Yay!
Like what I believe about myself is that like I've always been this way, but I shut it off big time when I was growing up because it just when whatever way got the message in society and school at home that like that isn't a place to be like open and emotional, and however I was feeling, I got the message that not okay. So I remember shutting it down and feeling really disconnected from myself a lot of my growing up, like a lot just lost, numb, confused, really wanting just like to fit in, and like spending a lot of my energy doing that. And what shifted for me, it wasn't a conscious thing, like I'm going to change that. I think the turning point for me was when I went through some health issues, like in 1920, where I went to the doctor. They're like, take this pill. This is the only thing you can do. You're going to be on it for the rest of your life. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so I remember having the switch inside me being like, nope, I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to just start researching myself and find a natural remedy or, see what I can learn on my own. So I remember just like devouring books on holistic healing. And so I think that's when I really started to open up, because of course, holistic healing, they're talking about emotions and how they're connected to the physical. And they're talking about all these things that could be contributing to my physical ailment that like made so much sense. And so that's when I started going to get massage and energy work. And so it was really in those sessions of like seeing other people, other practitioners, where I started to connect with and I think shed those, like that armor that I had built up all my growing up. I started to shed that and really connect to like, oh my gosh, I have a felt sense. And I just started to really just get really excited about that and put a lot of energy into that. So that's where it shifted for me. I think it was a slow process. It wasn't like a one-time thing of like at this session. It was like lots of conversations and sessions with other practitioners that started to open me up in this way and reconnect me. Really, it wasn't even like a new opening. It was like, oh yeah, this makes sense, and I kind of remember this, but it's been gone for so long. I've been so distant from it. So it was more of a remembering.
And what I almost hear you saying too is the things that you were, and I'm going to use the word punished, even though that might be a little harsh, but the things that you were punished for as a child were celebrated finally later.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
then there was space. And I feel exactly the same way. Just growing up in Southern Ohio, everything you're supposed to do, you're supposed to do whatever it is that your parents, think you're supposed to do. And we were raised in a religious household, and I was supposed to fit in a box, and I couldn't have named it back then, but I was constantly just I felt crazy. And I can relate. Yeah. Instead of going numb, I'm very much an actor outer. So I was histrionic and just needy and crying all the time. And I was frankly suicidal and all of these things because I just didn't know how to sort out these messages that I were getting that I was not okay. And now as a therapist, not only am I okay, but people are like, no, you're really fucking good at what you do. And it's because of this gift. And I may not have developed that gift quite as deftly had I been encouraged. I don't know. You never know, right?
Yeah. I totally can resonate with so much of what you said. And sometimes I'll find myself saying like, oh my gosh, imagine if I was able to develop this, wow, sometimes I call it a superpower, this intuition, this thing that is such a gift from a young age. And then another part of me is like, my life would look so different. And you know what? I really like me and I like where I'm at. And so there's that too. So do I really want to look back and wish things were different, or is there a way to find acceptance and appreciation for where I am now and what all those challenges gave me, which I'm pretty happy.
I feel exactly the same way. And I think I had told you already that my parents both died in 2014, and my whole life had said, I am what I am despite my parents. And it wasn't until they died and I was able, I feel like somehow their death created space for me to step into my authenticity in a totally new way. And it was only after they died that I thought, no, I am who I am because of them, and able to embrace that rather than push that away, because I love who I am and I'm really proud of myself. And I also call it a superpower, really, too, the stuff that we do. Everybody has capacity for it, just like, your own truth, but we have to step into it. We have to cultivate it and practice.
Yeah, it's definitely a practice.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much everybody I talk to when we get into these things, everything is a practice because everything's impermanent, right?
Totally.
I feel like we could continue talking about all the things forever. How do you, I think something else that's kind of come up in these interviews is the way that the people that I'm interviewing, how they take care of themselves now. Because I think once you step into this awareness, at least for me, I probably spend more time on self-care than I do anything else because I'm more aware of my suffering and the pain and all of it. So how do you do that? What do you spend time doing to care for yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel the same way. Like, I spend a lot of time. Sometimes my friends are like, wow, you do a lot. And I was like, I do, because I feel like if I show up for other people in this way, I really need to fill up my well, right? I need to be full to do this. My self-care really can vary. I really need to stay connected to what my body's wanting versus what I think it needs. So sometimes I'm like, I must do yoga 4 times a week, and I must for this long. And I'm like, well, Jen, is that necessarily what you need today? That is then a big part of my practice. Because sometimes I'm like, no, I really just need to rest and lay down. That's actually what I need. And that's self-care. So it really varies. I do movement stuff. So yoga or dance is a big part of my self-care. I do meditation. I smudge a lot. I do tapping work. And this, maybe it sounds like I'm doing this for hours a day. And it's not. A lot of my practices are 30 seconds or 3 minutes. I mean, I am really passionate about simple yet practical and powerful tools. And of course, I'll go to a yoga class for an hour or 90 minutes. That's not I don't take care of myself in these longer ways, but I found that for me, and everyone's different, that when I incorporate several things throughout the day, and even if they're really small and quick, that has made the biggest impact for me. And it really varies. I mean, I read a lot too. I read spiritual books, which really just help my mindset come back to what I know to be true when I start to follow stories or get anxious about, the future. So that's a big part is reading. Yeah, I feel like it really can vary day to day.
Yeah. And it's funny that you were talking about oh, I feel like I have to go to yoga this many times. I literally yesterday was fighting with myself about, do I go to the gym or don't I go to the gym? And then I always forget some of these tools, but I talked to you about after I listened to your last interview, I started muscle testing myself again.
Oh, nice.
And so I muscle tested. Do I go to the gym? And it said no. And I was like, is it in my highest good to rest today? Yes. So then I was able to release that pressure that my mind is telling me, you must accomplish X, Y, Z for the week in order to consider yourself successful, not even successful, just to meet quota.
That is awesome. I love that you gave that specific example too, because when I teach muscle testing, that's one of the examples I give, because I'm like, I muscle test for everything. For instance, and I give that exact example. Sometimes I what should I do for my body right now in this moment? And I get pulled in all these different directions. I'm like, well, you could meditate, or you could go for a walk, or it's I'll just sit down and muscle test, and it just takes away all this pressure that you should know the right answer in your mind, and it I can surrender more when I just let go and trust that okay, this is what's coming up for me.
Right.
I love that you use that example. It's great.
Wait, for people who don't know what muscle testing is, can you describe it?
Yeah, there's different ways to do it. So you can use a pendulum, which is anything can be a pendulum. You can take your necklace that has a little weight at the bottom and use it. I've used my keys before, but really anything. But you might see it in like a metaphysical store on a string or a chain with like a stone at the bottom. Those are kind of sold as pendulums. And then you can also use your finger. So using your thumb and your pinky, for instance, like on your left hand. And if you take your thumb and your first finger through that, and it's weird to describe it without showing it.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing it right now. Like, here, just like this.
I'll just like kind of walk you through it. Right? Is that okay?
Yeah, please.
Like, as if I'm teaching it? Okay.
Yes.
So take your left hand, thumb to pinky. Take your right hand, thumb and first finger, and loop it through that hole. And then you're going to, with the thumb and first finger, you're going to press out. And that's the motion. And then, but first, before you do that, you're going to take a deep breath. And you're going to say or think to yourself, what is yes? And then press out. And most likely, you'll get kind of a strong connection where your thumb and your pinky finger won't separate. And then take another deep breath and stop doing anything with your fingers. And then say or think, show what is no. Yep. And when I do that, I get a little break.
Yep, exactly.
Is that what happened to you? Okay.
Yep.
And so this can be used to, so it's like a circuit, right? So what I've learned is that if you were on your left hand to do your first finger and pinky, like that's not a full circuit. You have to do thumb to pinky on that left hand to get the circuit. And that your body's an electrical system and it's reading electrically. I don't even know how more to talk about it than that.
Yeah.
But to play with that. And so in the beginning, when people are like, this is BS.
Yeah. You can say shit. I mark all of these as explicit because I always cuss.
Okay, great. Awesome. I was like trying to be really careful.
Oh, fuck that.
When I'm teaching it, what I say is play with yes, no questions that you know to be true to build confidence with yourself. Like, is my name Jen?
Yes, that's what I always start
Bob? With. Am I in Washington? Am I in Iowa? And so do this till you're like, oh my gosh, this freaking works. And then you can start to play. And I encourage people, like, don't go for the big things. Like, should I quit my job and go back to school today? You know, like, this isn't to predict the future. This is to feel into, like, in this moment, like, what's calling you. So, again, the self-care thing, that's a great thing to start with. Like food. A lot of people use this for food testing. Looking at a meal or, tuning into foods. Is this in my highest good? That's a question I ask a lot. Is this in my highest good right now? Yes or no, whether I'm holding it over, a certain food item or thinking. So yeah, it's a really useful tool. I really like it. And what's nice about using your fingers is that you don't need anything. You don't need to find the necklace. You don't need to find, you can use your own body.
No, I teach a lot of my clients to do it. And I'm guessing that 0 of them have actually followed through with it. But yeah, I use it for myself. And I got trained in comprehensive energy psychology, and that's where I learned it. But since then, I've looked back, and there's a place called Satnam Yoga here. And on the first Friday of the month, they do a little healing circle. And so they have a bunch of healers or whatnot who come in and do things. And at the time I was really struggling with some food stuff, and this woman was reading my tarot, and she had said something, and I was like, yeah, that kind of sort of sounds like if, I've got this food thing. She's like, wait, what? You've got a food thing? And I'm like, yeah. And so I describe it to her, and she's like, oh, well, we're going to fix this right now. And she did energy psychology, and I don't know exactly what things she was having me tap, but she was testing me with muscle testing. And all I remember at the end of that was she's like, you're going to eat the rainbow. And at the time I was like, oh, okay, whatever the fuck that means. But ever since then, I have been eating way more fruits and vegetables.
Awesome.
I have a smoothie every morning that literally has every color in the rainbow.
That's so great.
Yeah. And really since then, everything changed. And I'm like, my food stuff isn't fixed necessarily, but the stuff that I was struggling with at that time, gone.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what I love about that story is it speaks to being open and curious versus being judgmental. I don't know. So I've had this experience in myself where I'm like, that makes no sense. I'm going to just not take that in because my mind can't figure out what that means. But if I take that, wow, I don't know what that means, but let's just see what happens. You never know that it can ripple in this unexpected way of you actually say, you're like, yeah, I'm eating all these different fruits and vegetables, which is, that's such an important thing, I think, about seeing practitioners and maybe like different languages. Like, sometimes the words don't resonate exactly, but if you can be like, okay, or if like 90% does, but you're like, oh, that 10% didn't make, for instance, if you go to like a tarot card reader, so be like, that 10% made no sense. So I'm going to like, I've, worked with people, or I have friends who are like, so none of it, I'm just going to like not trust any of it. And it's like, well, what about that 90? Or what about just seeing where it leads and trusting that it will land? And even if your mind doesn't find out exactly how.
Right. Yeah. I've found, because I started going to a tarot class and started doing it for myself. And I can give myself really good readings. And I think I realized that it's just another tool, right? It's just, if you are attached to the energy, then the cards get pulled that represent whatever. And the other thing, people are like, oh, well, you're just putting your own perspective on that. Like, that's the fucking point. Yeah. Totally. That's how horoscopes resonate with people, is you put your own, experience, your own life experience on it. And that's what makes it resonate.
Yeah. You have to be open to doing that and open to leaning into that and through your lens. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've talked about a ton today, but is there anything else that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you?
No, I feel that was, nothing's coming up or kind of tapping me on the shoulder at all. Like, that feels really good. I'm so glad we got to connect.
Yeah, me too. And I will be advertising your website so people can find you, and I just want to make sure to plug and let everybody know you work with people over the phone. So even though you're in Washington, because Jen did a Reiki session with me just over a week ago, and it was so lovely. And it's so cool. I've always been, even though I'm a fucking Reiki master and I was taught how to do distance Reiki, I've still had this thing in my mind that I can't do distance Reiki, but I can receive it. So yeah, you might as well have been in the room with me, because it was that impactful. So plug, Jen George is kind of amazing.
Thank you. That's really sweet of you.
Yeah.
And I just will say that I had that exact same experience before I did long distance Reiki. I was like, I don't know, but then yet I was receiving it at the same time. So we're such interesting beings, right?
I know. This is why psychology works, because we're like, everything is the same too. Yeah. Humans are so predictable.
Yes, totally.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was lovely.
Thank you so much to Jen George for being with me today. I really hope you enjoyed that interview, listening to it, I guess, as much as I enjoyed chatting with Jen. And as always, thanks to Andrea Klunder and Edwin Ruiz at the Creative Imposter Studios for editing. Thanks to Liam O'Donnell for our awesome album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. For more information on Jen George, you can visit my website. You can find it several different ways. One of those ways is bit.ly/wounded-healer. That's bit.ly/wounded-healer. You can also go to www.headhearttherapy.com. You can find Conversations with a Wounded Healer and Head Heart Therapy on Facebook and Twitter, and you can check the website for details. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.